read in a classical sense of wanting more and more and more in an adult manner is something that's a neuroses that's been created. I think kids, again, it's very hard to pinpoint that unless you know the environment. I couldn't generalize.
And that may be more survival, Peter. You know, he has it. You know, he's got the cookie. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm hungry. I want it.
And that's the same mechanism. It's scarcity. When there's somebody has something and somebody doesn't, somebody, feels out of place and they want it. And this is what we hope to eliminate. And I think if the society was altered to the extent where the bare necessities, like people are not without food. To think that we can't produce food on this planet for everybody is absolutely ludicrous. To think that to think that it's just a natural element to have people starving in different areas of the planet without homes is really just unbelievable. And it's when you look at the actual statistics, the numbers, and what's technologically possible, we could grow food in the middle of the desert. All you do is tap down to the water table and use soilless agriculture, use hydroponic agriculture. You can use multiple forms of technology. These are things that Jacques Fresco has actually worked out. He's literally devised systems of transition into this type of concept. But, that's a long-winded point. So.
Waco, Texas, first-time caller. You're on with Peter Joseph on Coast to Coast. Go ahead, Cole.
Wow. Hi, George, Peter. Huge honor. Wow, all my friends are going to be so jealous that I got to talk to George Norian, the Zeitgeist guy. But, well, Peter, my question is, love both the films. At the end of the second one, you make this list of things that we should, do to help with the Zeitgeist movement. And, really good detailed list, but then you get to a point where you say that we need to openly reject the current political system, but you don't really say how. I mean, with the country we have today, most people don't participate in the political system, and the politicians almost seem to like it that way.
No, I understand that point very well. That was one of the more difficult things, which I intend to clarify when the other websites are developed more so. What I meant by that is the rejection of the political system doesn't mean not participate per se. It means that if you listen to my language when I describe that particular point, I'm not saying, don't vote or anything like that. You have to do something, but unfortunately, what you're doing has very little ramifications. Very, very, very little ramifications because the system is bought and paid for. I mean, Obama and McCain, for example, McCain was positioned to fall. If you pay enough attention, you see that Obama was the chosen one a long time ago. And, they maneuver their media to do the mass psychology brainwashing very, very well. And the money comes in the sectors that are necessary for each particular candidate. So my point is that don't be satisfied by this at all. And secondly, if you go back to the earlier point in the film, in part 4, actually part 3, I describe the irrelevancy of politics in general. And this is the most important point, and that's why I actually have it in there more than anything else at the end, is because politics, first of all, the people that are in power in politics have no real capacity to solve problems because the real problems in life, at least holistically, are actually technical. They're not anything else. They're not moral or ethical. They're technical. If you have a problem with, a particular infrastructure, what do these guys do? They get together and they have to establish budgets and they have to get approval, and they do all of this stuff when in reality it's a technical issue. You resolve it technically and not politically. And there's a big differentiation there that I think people need to wake up and consider. As far as I'm concerned, the political system is totally outmoded. It's there to preserve their monetary-based power structure. It's there to preserve their elitism. Honestly, if politicians weren't politicians and they actually knew about, say, technology, if they were trained in, say, human behavior, if they understood nature, that would be a different thing. That's what needs to be implemented. But politics, what's the background of most politicians? They're either coming from law or they're coming from business.
Primarily law.
Yeah, and the law is one of the most corrupt. Law is in a semantic manipulation game. Law, of course, laws themselves are made because of they're made because of problems in the system that can't be resolved through technological means. In other words, they don't understand the problem, so they make a law to try and control human behavior. And that's what a law is. A law is actually proof that the system is a failure. For every law on the books, there's just one more example of a failure of the social structure. So they just keep making more and more laws because they don't know how to solve problems in ways they don't want to. So anyway, I don't mean to deviate, but my point was that politics needs to be seen for what it is, which is an outmoded system at this point. We need to redesign the structure where politics isn't even needed. And if you didn't have money, for example, you wouldn't need politics. If you had a system that's designed based on technological efficiency where there wasn't things like, corporate planned obsolescence. To remember, everything in our society that's built through the corporations is essentially fallible by its very construct because the market system does not allow the highest forms of technology and highest forms of endurable materials to be used in production.
No, because the system, the way it's built right now, wouldn't work that way.
Right. I mean, you could make cars are the classic example of planned obsolescence. They make more money servicing cars than they do actually producing the cars and selling them.
In time, absolutely. And
they're aware of that.
And when they get out of warranty, they make a lot of money.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what's to be expected from this system. So, there's many different things I could talk about, but I would have to say that politics, in my opinion, I don't take it very seriously. I do on just a very general level. If I see, some just obvious corruption coming in, I participate. I always participate in general, but it's always, a little smirk on my face because I know money rules, and then, of course, you have the rigged voting machines, which is extremely transparent. I'm sure you've talked about that, perhaps, George.
Sure have.
And, the game it's rigged, and it doesn't really matter what they shuffle around every 4 or 8 years because the real players are behind the scenes, and they're the kingpins of the financial and corporate industry.
Peter, in the few moments we have here, do you think this economic calamity that we're in right now is done intentionally to get us all involved in this one world government we hear so much about?
Well, essentially, the fractional reserve system is the culprit here. Well, not the culprit; it's the mechanism that has triggered this because the fractional reserve system is a big Ponzi scheme. And the only, the boom and bust cycle, if you talk to economics people, they tell you that it's a natural phenomenon. It's not. The more money in the system, the more there is, the more things, move. It goes into sectors in the markets, bubbles are created like the housing market. And then when they detract the money supply, things collapse because all the industries that have been set up utilizing that money no longer have the resources anymore. So it contracts, and then, people are going bankrupt, foreclosures on houses, all that stuff begins to emerge. So the financial collapse, They had to anticipate this by all means, and whoever in the Bank of England when they first put this into practice, they had to have known what they were doing.
Absolutely.
And I can't tell what their driving interest was. I don't think, for example, 300 years ago they were waiting and alluding to this big world government. I think they saw the advantage of it at that point, and they utilized it on a case by case basis because they knew they had the highest form of control. So the fact that it's collapsed the way it is, I have to say that I think it's definitely working for a massive restructuring of the economic system. They want, a world economic system, which is essentially a world government.
Peter, get your website out. We're ready to leave.
Okay, it's zeitgeistmovie.com.
Zeitgeist.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Peter, thanks so much. We've got to get you back for more than 1 hour.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Peter Joseph, producer, writer, director of the sensation Zeitgeist and Zeitgeist Addendum. When I come right back, it's open lines, plus we're going to open up